me ask you something. What is the one thing that makes you feel anxious, but you really may avoid dealing with? I want you to take a moment and I want you to get really clear. Maybe it's fear of public speaking, maybe it's difficult to even have a conversations, maybe facing your own emotions. Whatever it is, I want you to know that you are not alone. And today we're going to walk you through, I'm going to walk you through and talk through with you how to face it head on. And if this resonates with you, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Dr. Cheryl Clarke, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a communication coach, and a founder of Speak Your Power Now Academy. I help people to discover their authentic voice and break through the barriers of how they can reach their true potential. And in today's show, I'm going to show you how to explore how to take control and rewire your brain. Take control of your anxiety and to rewire that brain. We're going to dive into how we can do that in 3 simple steps, right? So, I want to also look and see how I overcame anxiety and how what the things that I did. And we're going to be able to show you how to do that in 3 manageable steps. So, I want you to get ready because we're going to dive right into it. But before I dive into what is anxiety and you're going to learn about it, I want to talk about my own struggles and my own journey with anxiety. For a long time, as much as I can remember, I didn't know to name it anxiety. However, I struggled with the fear of speaking and reading aloud. This was happening in grade school. Speaking aloud, reading in front of people, especially in school. And I feared so much that my heart started to race. How many can can probably relate? Feel like it's about to jump out of my chest. Sometimes the teachers would call me to read, and my mind would go completely blank. I would stumble over my words, and I was convinced that everyone was staring at me and judging me. And I was just so struck with fear at times. And it wasn't just about speaking out loud. I also had fear of taking a test or failing a test. So no matter how much I studied, I thought I was going to get a bad grade or I didn't understand or whatever the case would be. My palm would be sweating when it's time for the test to happen. And it was like my brain was shut down in that exact moment when I needed it the most. So at that time, I didn't realize what I was experiencing was anxiety, panic attacks. And I thought it meant that something was wrong with me. And that wasn't good enough, and I wasn't capable enough. But here's the thing I learned. Since I understood what anxiety is and what it's not a weakness. It means that I needed to learn how to cope with my body. I need to learn how to cope with the things that was externally happening and internally happening with me. And what I found out is that you have to learn how to take control over you. And the good news is you may not have anxiety, but if you do, and anxiety is normal, a lot of people have anxiety. That's the most diagnosed thing that's out there. And anxiety, you don't want it to control your life. In fact, I want to show you how I rewired my brain. I show clients how to rewire their brain to really handle it, handle the fear that may come up, and really move into their confidence. So if it's the first time you're here, I usually get my pad or a pen out. So you go ahead and do the same, whatever feels comfortable for you. You get your pad out, you get your iPad, whatever it is that you use to take down your notes. And we're going to be moving into how you understanding what anxiety is. And I may just break this up in 2 parts because I want you to really, really get it. Because it's important for you to understand what your body may be going through. So the first thing I want to talk about, what is anxiety? So the word anxiety, you just write it down, and I want you to maybe look at it because you may not know what anxiety is. So we're going to explain what anxiety is. Anxiety. So anxiety, when you look at what it is, I'm gonna give it to you very, very simple. Anxiety is a natural response. to stress or something that may be uncertain, or maybe the instability to something internally or externally, right? So it often manifests in heightened states, worry, maybe fear, at the core of what anxiety really. Anxiety really at the core of it, it serves as a function for a purpose to alert us. That's what anxiety does. The potential dangers or challenges that we may have. Um, However, when anxiety becomes chronic or overwhelming, it can interfere with your ability to live and fully live, fully feel freedom, fully feel to be able to move through that. Now, see, this is where anxiety for me was interfering with my day to day life, right? So anxiety is an just not an internal situation. I want you to listen to this. So internally, we got some things going on. It's oftentimes what we look at as our surroundings that may trigger us. So think about that. Your environment may be unstable, maybe a relationship or anything like that. So I call those uncertainties about your environment, the external things that may happen, maybe a relationship, and maybe your work, and maybe societal pressures, and maybe those things that you're feeling that the anxiety may be amplified. There's also an interplay with the psychology of anxiety and the physiology of anxiety. So, anxiety isn't only in your head, it's also in our body. So, what happens is your stress hormones like cortisol and a cortisone, what it does is it fuels us. And what happens is you have these physical sensations like anxiety, such as your racing heart. So these are indicators, right? The racing heart, your breath starts to get shallow, maybe your muscle starts to tense up, maybe profusely sweating. All these are indicators, are biophysiological indicators that show us deeply that we mentally and our physical states are intertwined, right? So they are interplay with each other. And this is where it comes in at. It starts to happen when we have a trigger. Now, the trigger is the biggest thing that we need to look at. The biggest drivers of anxiety is that unknown of what's happening or what's going to happen. And it's a trigger. And when we don't know what's happening next, our brains overreact and it prepares us for the worst. And this can be in a cycle of heightened alertness, overthinking, worry. So, what happens is a trigger can be anything for us. A trigger can be a sound, a trigger can be a person, a trigger can be a smell. And then what happens is then it goes to a space where I am not safe. I am in danger. And then the brain takes us somewhere. And this is where we got to look at what anxiety can do. So it is an interplay between the two. So I'm hoping that that you understand what anxiety is. Now this is where I want us to be in understanding what we can do with the anxiety. Because remember, all anxiety, first we need to change how we think about anxiety. All anxiety is not bad. Okay, I want you to know that. In fact, anxiety is the way your brain it highlights for us that something matters to you. It's designed to protect you. Remember, anxiety, not all anxiety is bad. This is designed to protect you, okay? Now, whether you are looking at how you are moving with this anxiety, this is where I want to give you how you can begin to reshift in how you look at anxiety. See, when you are clear about steering yourself in danger, I want to give you this opportunity to so how you can give yourself how to prepare yourself for important things. or events and things like that that may change your life. So sometimes anxiety, right, it can help you in the overwhelm. And I'm going to show you two major ways. So think about feeling unsafe, an unsafe situation. I had a client one time that she had an intense fear of elevators. And no, if she didn't know, and think about an elevator. It's no real threat. An elevator is not a real threat. But her brain was convinced that every time she would get on an elevator, it was risky for her. Her body would react in a way that she was in danger, creating a full on panic attack, anxiety about getting on this elevator, that she would walk up the stairs every day. So that this is what she felt unsafe. So her body was reactivated. Now, this disrupted her daily life and it was holding her back. The anxiety was creeping up on her. It made her harder to go to work. It made her harder to attend things that had an elevator building. She changed the way she did not move in certain things. She did not go to certain things. It interrupted her. If she knew that building had an elevator and that was the only way to get up there, bit by bit, she started to avoid more situations that she had to go on the elevator with. See, your world becomes smaller and smaller, and that's what anxiety does. Anxiety, and I call it maybe the cycle when you're in this like tunnel of anxiety. What happens is you start to avoid things, and this is what makes us anxious because our brain now is saying, okay, so this is what we're going to do. We interrupt it with avoidance. So I want you to write that down. What happens when we're going to protect ourselves in a unharmful way? See, one thing is to feeling unsafe. If you feel unsafe, you got to interrupt that. And then what happens is if you're in that anxiety tunnel, you tend to avoid. You're going to avoid. If you're in the tunnel, you're going to begin to avoid. What does that mean? That means that our brain says, avoidance. I'm going to win. That's how I win. I avoid. Good job, brain. Great job. Better next time. I'm going to just stay away. And over time, you reinforce the fear that makes it more harder for you to confront the fear. It makes it very easy for you. Now the good news is that when you start, this is what I want you to know. When you start, this is the space when you identify that fear, is that now we can retrain our brain. You get to see that these things, that the situations that may be different situations that you may have been avoiding and running away from, we need to build new connections with those things. The saying that I'm not safe, but I am safe. I'm safe. And this is how we can begin to do this, is that we can know how to break it down to reshape how we think and how anxiety can work for your good. Remember, not all anxiety is bad. Now there's a big word I'm going to put here now. Now this word is very important, but you don't really have to understand it in its core. I'm going to explain it. I'm going to explain it to you because we need to know what this is, what we're about to do, and why we're about to do it. It's called neuroplasticity. Now, the neuroplasticity of our brain begins that we can understand how something is working. Now, I love the brain. The brain is it's so fascinating to me. So for a long time, scientists understood that the thought of our brain and how that it was set in stone in our adulthood. But we found out that our brain is not set in stone, right? But it's really a factor of it's a living organism. It's a living roadmap. And consistently we adapt to certain things and we respond and we can shift certain things and we can change certain things. And that's called neuroplasticity. Now that you think in the moment, every time you learn something new, every time you take a deliberate action, you are reshaping your brain and you're carving out new pathways in the maze, right? You're carving out that new pathway, a new walkway. You're clearing it out to navigate something new. And here's the catch. Consistently walking through the path of fear and avoidance and anxiety, those pathways are worn out and you know them, but you know that pathway there. You know the pathway of fear, you know the avoidance stuff, you know the pathway of avoidance or that anxiety, you know how to navigate that. Your brain starts a default of automatic. When I had to read in front of somebody, I knew it was my turn, I would automatically probably go to the bathroom. I would get out that room, or I would act like I have a coughing attack. Those are things that you do to avoid those things that, or I'll tell a joke because I was always the funny person in the room. So those are the avoidance things that you do. So I hope this is connecting with you. And then I want you to look and see, I want you to see where those patterns may get you stuck, because that's critical. Those are patterns that get you stuck. So what neuroplasticity does, it means that you have the efforts and the discipline to get the right strategies that you can actively reshape those pathways in your brain. And rewiring your brain, you think differently, you act differently, and you feel differently. So let me give you an example. Remember, we're talking about public speaking. You may avoid public speaking in front of someone, but to reinforce this fear, it becomes stronger and it's automatic for you. So taking small, deliberate steps towards it is like you're going to look in the mirror and say, okay, small steps in this area is that I'm going to create a new pathway. Look in the mirror and start practicing. Then you're going to say, the fear is going to begin to diminish because now you're going to practice with people. Practice speaking up. Practice. That's why I started Speak Your Power Now, because a lot of us really don't know how, or get the fear of saying, this is what I am called to do, but I'm afraid to do. I'm afraid to speak up. I'm going to be afraid to be judged or anything like that. So the essence of neuroplasticity is your brain can change based on how you use it. That's a critical piece. That's a critical piece. It doesn't just happen. It requires your action, your intention, and your willingness. So, what does it require? Your action. It requires your intention, your intent, and your willingness. Those are the three things. And you're going to feel uncomfortable. And managing your anxiety is not just about coping, it's about you taking the fundamental things to rewire that brain, because stress and fear is a part of life. But the power of neuroplasticity is that it's available to you right now. So let me give you the 3 ways of taking action right now. I call the first step building an exposure ladder. What is that ladder? That's building this is the first step. Number 1. You're going to build a ladder. And the ladder is called the exposure ladder. What does that mean? It means first I need to understand that anxiety grows when I avoid it, right? That's what you need to realize. And if you're frightened, the more avoiding you're going to do. And the larger the fear is going to become, and you're going to keep feeding it. So what I need you to do, the exposure ladder, what happens is you're going to go up, breaking it down into smaller, tiny parts. The approach is you're going to take one step on the ladder at a time, right? So this approach is the step on the ladder is just not very large. It's just one step. Taking that one step will challenge you just enough to be uncomfortable. Not overwhelming, because if it's public speaking, then this first step you could take is maybe just stand in front of your mirror, practicing one sentence. That's doable. You're not going to master it overnight. But as you move, then you record yourself on a video like I'm doing now. This is me facing my fear of coming on here, talking to you, giving information, acknowledging that people need information around mental wellness. So this is why I share this video with you. And then share this video with friends. See how you did. This is a simple tool that you can start right now. Every time you feel that you need to confront it. Confront that fear and prove to yourself, yes, I can handle this. I'm going to build the confidence to do this. I'm competent. The second thing is I need you to change the fundamental rules about fear. The changing up for fear. Let's change fear to excitement. To get excited. Change it to excitement. If you're excited about something, then you understand the approach is very differently. The fear to avoid it at all costs can be something that makes it weak, make what you even feel weaker and not stronger. Because you need to begin to look at yourself and say, I'm going to face it, even if it scares me, because it's important. It may not be easy, but I have the willingness, remember the willingness that comes that I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to wait, and I'm going to act, and I'm going to be, in despite of the fear. It's not just about being brave. It's about training your brain that fear isn't going to turn you away. And the fascinating part about all this is that when you begin to confront that, your brain responds differently. Instead of it releasing the stress hormones, it will begin to build a pathway associated with you to fear that associated that the fear of the situation is that I have safety and confidence in myself and confidence that I could do that. This is why the courage is so important in reshaping the brain entirely. So the point here is quickly, fear doesn't mean that you stop. Too many people believe that the presence of fear is a signal to turn back. That's wrong. Fear isn't your enemy. It's a guide that tells you there's excitement over there, tells you that you're at the edge of really getting competent, really having the confidence to do what I need to do. It lies ahead. And the last one is consistent action. Action consistently. Consistent action. See, this is where the rubber meets the road, where you can rewire your brain, but it requires you to act. See, as you begin to look at the small little actions, rolling the ball, you decide to take a step, the brain needs you to begin to take one step at a time, one day at a time. It requires you to do that. So if it's public speaking, the first action is that you need to confront yourself in the mirror. Take 5 minutes and do that. The next day, record yourself for 10 minutes. Give it to a friend. And over time, you begin to build it up. Do it in front of a small group, then a larger one. Each action, no matter how small, it reinforces a new pattern in your brain. It's like laying down new bricks for a new road in the pathway of your brain. And the road becomes very much so easy for you to go through it, and the fear begins to diminish. Now, here's the thing I want you to remember. The first step is you're going to break down the fear by building a ladder. Break down in smaller steps. Next thing, you're going to have this thing, you're going to change the fear. Don't avoid the fear. It's for you to face it. You're going to begin to change your fear into excitement. The third thing is consistent action. No matter how small, you're going to take that action. Now, this works, and let me tell you why it works. It works, the process works, one, because it's science-based. Secondly, it's clear to understand that as you leverage the principles in neuroplasticity of your brain, The brain is based on repeated flooding and exposure to things. If you are consistently avoiding what scares you, the brain learns to associate the avoidance with survival. And that's why the fear grows. So you need to begin to face it step by step, retrain your brain to recognize that you're in a safe situation. And as you begin to look at that, you will see that your brain will begin to open up and you will find new pathways. And this is not something that you have to look at and say that I'm not, I'm scared about this, I'm doing this. It's about you understanding that you have the ability to move in this today if you decide to. It's up to you. Well, I hope you got something out of today. Give your questions, your comments, because ultimately you are the reason how you can begin to start controlling your anxiety today and fully stepping in to who you're meant to be. So I'm glad that you came to join me today. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, and remember that your life is defined by one single moment. Let that moment be today. Have a great day. Until next time.